In the world of old photographs, some images tell stories that go far beyond what meets the eye. Today, we're going to explore one such photograph that seemed perfectly normal for over a century, until modern technology revealed a secret so dark that it changed everything we thought we knew about the Sterling family. Picture this: a grand estate in 1914, with perfectly manicured gardens and towering oak trees. Standing in front of this beautiful mansion is the Sterling family, dressed in their finest clothes. Mr. Harold Sterling stands tall and proud in his dark suit, his hand resting on the shoulder of his elegant wife, Margaret. Their 3 children are arranged beside them: teenage twins Robert and Catherine, and little Clara, just 8 years old with golden curls and bright eyes. Everyone in the photograph is smiling. The sun is shining. The Sterling family looks like the picture of success and happiness. For over 100 years, this photograph sat in archives and family collections, admired as a perfect example of early 20th century family portraiture. No one suspected that beneath those cheerful smiles lay one of the most disturbing family secrets ever uncovered. Enter Dr. Alistair Finch, a digital archivist who specializes in restoring old photographs. Alistair has spent his career bringing new life to faded images, using cutting-edge technology to reveal details that were invisible to previous generations. His work has helped solve historical mysteries, identify unknown people in old photos, and preserve precious family memories. In the spring of 2023, Alistair received a call from the Sterling family estate. The last surviving member of the family had passed away, and her will specified that all family photographs should be digitized and donated to the local historical society. It was routine work for Alistair, the kind of project he handled several times a year. The collection arrived in 12 carefully packed boxes. Most of the photographs were what Alistair expected: family gatherings, holiday celebrations, and formal portraits spanning nearly a century. But one photograph immediately caught his attention. It was the 1914 family portrait, printed on thick, high-quality paper that had preserved remarkably well over the decades. Alistair began his usual process, carefully placing the photograph on his high-resolution scanner. This particular scanner could capture details invisible to the naked eye, revealing textures, layers, and tiny elements that photographers from 1914 never intended to preserve. As the scanning process completed, Alistair zoomed in to examine the image on his computer screen. Everything looked normal at first. The composition was excellent, the lighting was perfect, and the family's formal poses were typical for the era. But as Alistair examined each face more closely, something strange caught his eye. In the pupils of 8-year-old Clara Sterling there was a reflection. At normal viewing size, it was impossible to see. But at ultra-high magnification, the reflection became clear and deeply disturbing. The reflection in Clara's eyes was not what it should have been. Instead of showing the room around her or the photographer taking the picture, Clara's eyes reflected something twisted and frightening. It looked like a grotesque mask or face, distorted and menacing, positioned just outside the camera's view. The reflection was so clear that Alistair could make out specific details: hollow eye sockets, a twisted mouth, and what appeared to be exaggerated, frightening features. Alistair stared at his computer screen in disbelief. In his years of photograph restoration, he had never seen anything like this. The reflection was definitely not a printing error or damage to the photograph. It was captured at the moment the picture was taken, preserved in the child's eyes like a tiny window into what she was actually seeing that day. Unable to shake his curiosity, Alistair decided to research the Sterling family. What he found initially supported the cheerful image in the photograph. The Sterlings were wealthy landowners who had made their fortune in textiles and real estate. Harold Sterling was a respected businessman and philanthropist. Margaret Sterling was active in local charities. The family was frequently mentioned in society pages and local newspapers, always in positive contexts. But as Alistair dug deeper, he made a shocking discovery. Just 3 weeks after the family photograph was taken, Clara Sterling had died. The death certificate listed the cause as influenza, which was common enough in 1914 that it didn't raise any immediate suspicions. However, something about the timing bothered Alistair. The little girl who looked so healthy and vibrant in the photograph had supposedly succumbed to illness just days later. Alistair expanded his search, looking for any additional records about Clara's death. What he found made him even more suspicious. There were no hospital records, no doctor's notes, and no mention of other family members falling ill. For a wealthy family with access to the best medical care, the lack of documentation was unusual. Driven by an increasingly strong sense that something was wrong, Alistair began searching for information about the Sterling family's household staff. In those days, wealthy families employed many servants, and staff records were often better preserved than personal family documents. After hours of searching through employment records and city directories, Alistair found what he was looking for. The Sterling family had employed a governess named Eleanor Vance from 1913 to 1914. According to the records, Eleanor had been responsible for the education and care of all 3 Sterling children, with special attention to young Clara. But here's where things got interesting. Eleanor Vance was dismissed from her position in September 1914, just 2 weeks after Clara's death. Within a month, she had left the United States entirely, sailing to England and never returning. For a governess to leave so suddenly after the death of a child in her care was highly unusual. Typically, such staff members would remain with the family during times of grief, helping to care for the surviving children and manage household affairs. Eleanor's abrupt departure suggested something more complex was happening behind the scenes. Alistair spent weeks trying to track down any information about Eleanor Vance's life after she left America. Finally, through genealogy websites and international records, he located Eleanor's descendants in England. Her great-grandniece, Patricia Thornton, still lived in the same village where Eleanor had settled in 1914. When Alistair contacted Patricia and explained his research, she was initially hesitant to help. But when he described the disturbing reflection in Clara's eyes and shared his suspicions about the official story, Patricia's attitude changed completely. She told Alistair that her family had always known there was some dark secret about Eleanor's time in America, but Eleanor had never spoken about it, even on her deathbed. Patricia agreed to search her attic for any of Eleanor's belongings. What she found would change everything. Hidden in an old steamer trunk, wrapped in layers of faded cloth, was Eleanor Vance's private journal from her time with the Sterling family. The leather-bound book had remained untouched for over a century, preserving Eleanor's first-hand account of life in the Sterling household. The early entries in Eleanor's journal painted the same picture that Alistair had found in public records. The Sterling family appeared to be kind, wealthy, and respectable. Harold Sterling was described as a successful businessman who took great interest in his children's education. Margaret Sterling was portrayed as a devoted mother who wanted the best for her family. The children seemed healthy and well cared for. But as Alistair read further into the journal, Eleanor's tone began to change. She started writing about Mr. Sterling's unusual interest in modern psychology and his strange ideas about child development. According to Eleanor, Harold Sterling had become obsessed with new theories about correcting what he called undesirable traits in children. Eleanor wrote about how Mr. Sterling believed that Clara was too sensitive and imaginative for her own good. He worried that her tendency to daydream and create elaborate fantasy games was a sign of mental weakness that needed to be corrected before she became an adult. Despite Eleanor's protests that Clara was simply a normal, creative child, Mr. Sterling insisted that something had to be done. The journal entries from the summer of 1914 revealed that Harold Sterling had hired a man named Dr. Julian Blackwood to work with Clara. Eleanor was initially told that Dr. Blackwood was a photographer who would take a family portrait, but she quickly realized this was not the whole truth. Dr. Blackwood was indeed a photographer, but he was also a practitioner of experimental psychology who had been dismissed from several universities for his controversial methods. Eleanor's writing became increasingly frantic as she described Dr. Blackwood's treatment sessions with Clara. The man used fear-based techniques that he claimed would cure Clara of her excessive imagination. He would show her disturbing images and masks, then demand that she remain perfectly calm and composed. According to Eleanor, these sessions left Clara terrified and unable to sleep. The journal entry from the day the family photograph was taken revealed the full horror of what happened. Dr. Blackwood had decided that the family portrait would serve as the final test of his treatment. He wanted to prove that Clara could maintain perfect composure even while being frightened. As the family posed for the photograph, Dr. Blackwood positioned himself just outside the camera's view, holding up a grotesque mask designed to terrify the little girl. Eleanor watched in horror as Clara tried desperately to maintain her smile while staring at the frightening image reflected in Dr. Blackwood's mask. The child was frozen with fear, but she had been trained through weeks of psychological torment to hide her terror and present a perfect, cheerful face to the camera. The photograph captured this moment of hidden anguish, preserving Clara's fear in the reflection in her eyes. That night, according to Eleanor's journal, Clara suffered what would today be recognized as a severe panic attack. She was found by her mother, screaming and unable to recognize her surroundings. Dr. Blackwood declared this a sign that his treatment needed to be intensified, but Eleanor knew the child was having a complete psychological breakdown. Over the following days, Clara's condition worsened rapidly. She stopped eating, barely spoke, and spent most of her time hiding under her bed. Eleanor begged the Sterling parents to dismiss Dr. Blackwood and seek proper medical care for their daughter, but Harold Sterling was convinced that the treatment just needed more time to work. The final entries in Eleanor's journal described Clara's last days. The little girl had become completely withdrawn, unable to tolerate being in the same room as Dr. Blackwood. Her body began shutting down from the psychological trauma. Modern medical experts would recognize Clara's symptoms as severe acute stress reaction, a condition that can indeed be fatal in extreme cases, especially in children. When Clara died, Dr. Blackwood convinced the Sterling family that the death should be attributed to influenza to avoid any questions about his experimental methods. The family doctor, who had financial ties to Harold Sterling's business ventures, agreed to sign the death certificate listing influenza as the cause of death. Eleanor was paid a substantial sum of money and told to leave the country immediately. Eleanor's journal ended with her final entry, written aboard the ship taking her to England. She expressed her deep regret for not doing more to protect Clara and her determination to never speak of what she had witnessed. She had kept the secret for the rest of her life, but she had preserved the evidence in her journal, perhaps hoping that someday the truth would come to light. As Alistair finished reading Eleanor's journal, he realized that the Cheerful family photograph had been hiding a crime for over a century. The reflection in Clara's eyes was not just an odd detail, it was evidence of the psychological torture that led to her death. The image that had seemed to capture a moment of family happiness was actually documenting a child's final moments of terror. Alistair shared his findings with historians and child psychology experts who confirmed that the methods described in Eleanor's journal matched known experimental techniques used by fringe practitioners in the early 1900s. These methods, which would be considered severe child abuse today, were sometimes practiced by wealthy families who believed they were helping their children conform to social expectations. The Sterling family's story serves as a reminder that the past often holds secrets that challenge our assumptions about how people lived and what they valued. The photograph that seemed to show a perfect family moment was actually preserving evidence of a terrible crime, hidden in plain sight for more than 100 years. Today, the Sterling family photograph is housed in a special collection focused on the hidden histories of American families. Scholars study it not as an example of early photography, but as evidence of how child welfare has evolved over the past century. Clara Sterling's story has become part of academic discussions about historical child abuse and the importance of protecting vulnerable children from experimental psychological treatments. The reflection in Clara's eyes, once invisible to viewers, now serves as a powerful reminder that images can hold secrets that take decades or even centuries to uncover. Modern technology has given us the ability to see details that previous generations missed, sometimes revealing truths that were deliberately hidden. Dr. Alistair Finch continues his work as a digital archivist, but the Sterling family case changed his approach to historical photographs. He now looks more carefully for signs of hidden stories, understanding that even the most cheerful images might be preserving evidence of darker truths. His work with the Sterling photograph has inspired other researchers to examine historical images with fresh eyes, leading to new discoveries about families and events from the past. The story of Clara Sterling and the 1914 family photograph shows us that history is not always what it appears to be on the surface. Sometimes the most important stories are the ones that people tried hardest to hide, and sometimes those hidden stories are preserved in the smallest details, like a reflection in a frightened child's eyes, waiting over a century for someone with the right tools and the persistence to uncover the truth. What do you think about this incredible discovery? Have you ever wondered what secrets might be hidden in old family photographs? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into historical mystery, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more fascinating stories from the past. There are countless photographs out there, each with their own potential secrets waiting to be discovered.